I, 27M, found an open condom wrapper in my wife's, 29F, and my vacation home. She swears she had nothing to do with it. I'm feeling uncertain in my marriage. How do I move forward? I'm 27M, dealing with a situation involving my wife, 29F, that's affecting our relationship. We're college sweethearts, married for 4 years. We have a 2-year-old daughter and have built a life together. She's not just my wife but my best friend. We own a vacation home in the city, a gift from my in-laws after my wife passed the bar exam on her first try. Her family runs a prestigious law firm and her joining was a big deal. The vacation home serves as a retreat. Sometimes, after dates, we stay there. Other times my wife crashes there when she works late. Since I work from home, I also use it as a quiet place to focus, especially with our noisy renovations at home. Last week, while tidying up, I found something in the trash bin that made my stomach drop. An empty condom wrapper. Just the wrapper. No condom, no box, just that single damning piece of foil. My wife and I don't use condoms. I confronted her. She was disturbingly indifferent, as if I had asked about a candy wrapper. Then, as if something clicked, she mentioned she gave my sister-in-law, 27F, access during a snowstorm. My sil, who recently started dating someone, might have had company over. I didn't love that I wasn't informed, but the story made sense. So I dropped it until the Super Bowl. My SIL was over and we've always been close. Casually, I asked about her stay at the vacation home. She said she stayed there but never had anyone over. She was alone. Her words directly contradicted my wife's story. That night I brought it up with my wife. She dismissed it instantly. My sister is private about everything, she said. She probably didn't want to say anything. Let it go. But I couldn't. When I pushed, her reaction was sharp. She accused me of interrogating her, told me she had a stressful week, and that she didn't need this. When I reminded her that only 3 people had access, her, me, and her sister, she sighed, apologized, and swore she had nothing to do with it. I wanted to believe her. She's always despised cheating, especially after what she went through with her father. Growing up, she caught my FIL cheating multiple times. She eventually told my MIL, who chose to ignore it. That kind of betrayal disgusts my wife. But something doesn't add up. 2 nights ago, I couldn't sleep. I got up, went to the kitchen, poured myself a drink. Then on impulse, I grabbed my wife's phone from the counter. I don't do this. We trust each other, but my hands moved on their own. She had a text thread open with an unsaved number. The last message was from her. You have to be more careful, he almost found out. My breath hitched. I scrolled up, but the rest of the conversation was gone. Deleted. I checked the call logs, nothing unusual. I checked her photo album, normal. I checked her emails, clean, but that one text, that single sentence. I put the phone back exactly where it was and walked back to bed, my mind racing. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I've been watching, studying her. Every movement, every glance at her phone, every late-night shower, and something's off. I don't know who she was texting. I don't know what she meant, but I know this: someone else has been in our vacation home. Someone who shouldn't be, and I'm going to find out who. The next morning, I woke up with a tightness in my chest. My wife was already up, sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone. For a brief moment, I considered asking her about the text, just laying it all out. But I held back. I needed more. Proof. Something undeniable. Instead, I acted normal. I kissed her on the temple, muttered a groggy morning, and went about my day as if my world hadn't just been set on fire. I had to be smart. While she was in the shower, I grabbed my laptop and logged into our home security system. The vacation house had cameras, but only outside. I pulled up the footage from the week before, sifting through the timestamps. I knew my sister-in-law had stayed there during the snowstorm, so I looked at those dates first. There she was, pulling up alone, no one else, just her. I skipped ahead, focusing on the days my wife had stayed there. At first, nothing, just her car coming and going, nothing suspicious. Until 2 nights before I found the condom wrapper. Around 10:47 p.m., my wife's car pulled into the driveway. But she wasn't alone. A second car, a sleek black sedan, parked right behind her. The driver's side door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, broad shoulders, dressed in dark clothing. He walked right up to her like he belonged there. My stomach twisted as I watched my wife turn to him. The footage was grainy, but the way they moved, the familiarity. She reached for his wrist at one point, then quickly pulled away, glancing around nervously. I didn't need high definition to understand what I was seeing. They went inside together. I skipped forward in the footage. 2 hours later, the man left. Alone. My wife didn't walk him out. He just slipped out the front door and back into his car like he'd done it 100 times before. I stared at the screen, my vision swimming. I needed to see his face. I rewound the footage to the moment he got out of the car and zoomed in as much as I could. But the angle was off. His head was turned slightly away, his face obscured. I couldn't make out his features, just a sharp jawline, the shadow of stubble and short, dark hair. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Who the hell was he? My wife's text echoed in my head. You have to be more careful. He almost found out. A wave of nausea rolled over me. I knew I needed to confront her, but not yet. If she was lying to my face about this, she'd lie again. I needed more leverage, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. That night she told me she had to work late. She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her purse, and left. I waited exactly 20 minutes before I got in my car and tailed her. She drove straight to the vacation house. I parked down the street out of sight and watched. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Then headlights. A black sedan. My pulse pounded as I watched the same man from the footage step out of his car and walk to the front door. It opened almost immediately. My wife stood in the doorway. She let him in. I gritted my teeth, gripping the steering wheel so hard it ached. I could charge in. Demand answers. But I wasn't thinking clearly. I knew that much. Instead, I forced myself to stay put, to watch, to gather everything I could before making a move. 30 minutes passed. Then 40. The longer I sat there, the darker my thoughts became. Finally, the front door opened again. But this time, something was different. My wife wasn't in the doorway. The man stepped out alone, but he wasn't leaving. He turned, reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out, something metallic, a key. He locked the door behind him, and then he walked back to his car. I sat there frozen, my breath shallow. Why the hell did he have a key to my house? I watched him walk to his car, calm, deliberate, like he had nothing to hide, like he had done this before. The streetlights cast long shadows, and for a brief second, as he turned toward his vehicle, his face came into view. I strained to make out the details, but something about him felt off, familiar. My stomach twisted as a sick thought formed in the back of my mind. I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture, my hands shaking. He slid into his car, the engine roaring to life, and just as he pulled away, he glanced in my direction. I ducked instinctively, heart pounding. Did he see me? Was I just being paranoid? I waited a few minutes before stepping out of my car. The cold air burned my lungs, but I forced myself to move. I needed to see, to confirm what I already suspected. I approached the vacation house slowly, my pulse drumming in my ears. The door was locked, but I had my own key. My fingers felt numb as I slid it into the lock and turned. The door creaked open and I stepped inside. The air was thick with something I couldn't quite place. Not just the lingering scent of cologne, something else. Something metallic, blood. A cold sweat broke out along my spine. The house was silent, too silent. I moved carefully through the living room, then toward the bedroom. My wife should have been here. She was supposed to be here. But the bed was empty. No sign of her. My mind reeled, every possibility racing through my thoughts, and then I saw it. The bathroom door was ajar, the light flickering weakly. I swallowed hard and pushed it open. The first thing I noticed was the sink. The white porcelain stained with crimson streaks. A bloody towel balled up in the corner. The second thing was the phone on the floor. My wife's phone. The third thing, the thing that made my breath catch in my throat, was the message on the mirror, written in smeared red letters, "Stop looking." I staggered back, my pulse a violent thunder in my chest. The room spun. Where the hell was my wife? I grabbed her phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to unlock it, but it was dead. The battery drained. I stuffed it into my pocket and turned, nearly tripping over my own feet as I stumbled back into the living room. I checked every room, every closet, under the bed. Nothing. She was gone. And I had no idea where. I should have called the police. I should have done something rational. But my mind wasn't working right. All I could think about was the man, the key, the message on the mirror. I pulled out my phone and opened the picture I had taken of him. I stared at his face, feeling my world tilt sideways. I knew him, not well, but well enough. My wife's firm. He worked at my wife's goddamn law firm, and now she was missing. I bolted out of the house, barely remembering to lock the door behind me. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I started my car and peeled out of the driveway, my hands gripping the wheel like a vice. There was only one person who could tell me what the hell was going on, and I was going to find him. I drove like a madman, my thoughts spiraling in 1,000 directions at once. My wife was missing. There was blood in the bathroom, a cryptic warning smeared on the mirror, and the man who had just walked out of my house like he owned the place worked at my wife's law firm. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel as I sped toward the city. I needed to think, needed to be rational. But all I could feel was an overwhelming, suffocating dread clawing its way up my throat. Who the hell was he to her? A lover? A threat? Both. The image of my wife reaching for his wrist, the nervous glance she cast over her shoulder on the security footage, it played over and over in my mind, taunting me. Had she been in trouble this whole time? Had she been lying? Or had she been trying to protect me from something worse? I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I had to gulp down air, trying to stay steady. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to the downtown office building that housed my wife's firm. It was late, the city lights reflecting off the glass windows, casting eerie glows across the empty streets. Most of the offices were dark, but a few scattered lights were still on inside. I grabbed my phone, staring at the photo of the man again. I needed a name, something concrete. My wife never mentioned him, but I had seen him in passing before, at holiday parties, firm events. Always in the background, watching. I climbed out of the car and walked to the entrance. The doors were locked, but I wasn't leaving without something, anything. I pulled out my phone and dialed the only person at the firm I knew would answer at this hour, Natalie. She was my wife's paralegal, practically her right hand. Smart, loyal, and more importantly, she owed me a favor. She picked up on the third ring. "Hello." Her voice was groggy, laced with confusion. "Natalie, it's me. I need your help." Okay." A pause. "Are you all right? You sound—" "Listen to me," I cut her off. "There's a guy at the firm, tall, dark hair, late 30s, maybe early 40s, drives a black sedan. Who is he?" There was silence on the other end, too much silence. "Natalie," she exhaled sharply. "Why are you asking about him?" Something about her tone sent a fresh wave of unease through me. "Just tell me his name." She hesitated. "Derek Hale." Another pause. "Why Derek?" I clenched my jaw. The name didn't mean anything to me, but the way she said it, carefully, like she was stepping over broken glass, told me everything I needed to know. "You know him," I pressed. Natalie sighed. "Everyone at the firm knows him, but your wife." She stopped abruptly. My stomach twisted. "What?" "I don't know what's going on, but if this is about your wife, she's been tense lately, jumpy, and she's been meeting with Hale a lot more than usual." Something cold slithered down my spine. Meeting him where? Natalie hesitated again. Not at the office. She's been going off-site, to him. To him. I felt the blood drain from my face. Natalie, I said slowly, I need to know everything you can tell me about him, right now. She exhaled, low and unsteady. Hale isn't just another lawyer, he's not even technically part of the firm. He handles private clients. People who don't want their business on record. I frowned. What kind of people? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Dangerous ones. A chill swept through me. What does my wife have to do with him? A long silence. Then, I don't know, bullshit. Natalie, if you know something. I don't, she snapped, then sighed again. But listen, if your wife is tangled up with Hale, it's bad. Really bad. You should drop it. Walk away. She hung up. I stood there, my breath heavy in the quiet street, my heart hammering against my ribs. Walk away. That wasn't an option. My wife was missing, and I was going to find out why. I turned, shoving my phone into my pocket, and that's when I felt it. A shift in the air. A presence. Someone was watching me. I didn't turn around immediately. Instead, I took a slow step toward my car, my pulse spiking. My instincts were screaming, every nerve on edge. Then I heard it, the crunch of a footstep behind me. I spun around just as a dark figure lunged from the shadows. I barely had time to react before something hard slammed into the side of my head. Pain exploded in my skull. The world tilted. My vision blurred, and then everything went black. A low hum dragged me back to consciousness. My skull throbbed, my vision swimming in and out of focus. The first thing I registered was the cold, concrete beneath me, rough and damp. The air smelled of mildew and something sharper, something metallic. Blood. My blood. I tried to move, but my arms wouldn't respond. My wrists were bound behind me, something tight digging into my skin, zip ties. My ankles, too. A slow, creeping panic coiled in my gut as my senses sharpened. I wasn't outside anymore. Dim light flickered overhead, casting weak shadows against stained concrete walls. A basement, a storage room. I blinked, forcing my head up, my mind piecing together fragmented details. Then I saw him. Derek Hale. He leaned against a metal table, watching me like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. His face was unreadable, his dark eyes scanning me with quiet calculation. There was something controlled about him, something methodical. He wasn't some reckless thug. He was the kind of man who thought 5 moves ahead. I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. Finally awake, he muttered. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Where's my wife? My voice came out hoarse, unsteady. Hale exhaled, tilting his head. That's the question, isn't it? He pushed off the table, walking toward me with slow, deliberate steps. But I think the better question is, why the hell are you looking for her? I clenched my jaw. Because she's missing. His expression didn't change. Is she? The way he said it made my stomach twist. What the hell does that mean? He crouched in front of me, his eyes studying my face like he was searching for something. You think she's some victim, don't you? A slow, humorless smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Poor little wife taken by the big, bad man. I said nothing, my mind racing. Tell me something, he murmured. What do you really know about your wife? I stared at him, my breath shallow. I know she wouldn't just disappear. I know she was afraid of something. My voice hardened. I know she was meeting you in secret. Hale chuckled under his breath. And you think that means she was in danger? He shook his head. You really don't get it, do you? My fingers curled into fists behind my back. Then explain it to me. He sighed, standing up again. I don't think you're ready for that. He paced for a moment, his jaw tightening. But here's what I will tell you. Your wife isn't who you think she is. And the fact that you're sitting here in this room means you've already made a very big mistake. My skin went cold. What the hell are you talking about? Hale studied me for a long moment. Then, with a flicker of something almost like pity, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. My wife's phone. My throat tightened as he turned the screen toward me. A single message was displayed. A text from her. If he finds out the truth, we're both dead. The words blurred in my vision, my pulse pounding so hard it made my head swim. This didn't make sense. None of it made sense. She sent this, I rasped, my voice barely above a whisper. To you, Hale nodded. About you, I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real, this wasn't possible. My wife was warning him about me. I shook my head, my throat tightening. No, that's not true. Hale's eyes darkened. You're thinking too small. You think this is just about an affair. He crouched again, his voice lowering. You've been looking for proof, looking for lies. But what if I told you that you're the one who's been lied to? He leaned in, his next words a whisper. What if I told you that your wife isn't missing? He let the words hang, watching them sink in. What if I told you she ran? Something deep inside me splintered. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Hale stood, slipping the phone back into his pocket. You need to stop looking for her. His voice was steady, almost cold. Because if you find her, a pause, a slow exhale, she won't be happy to see you.